Hey everybody, Jeremy Lafrentz with Backstage Entertainment. Kind of stepping out of our boundaries a little bit here. We've done a lot of rock interviews for the fans, and we're going into theater now. And we're sitting here, guys, with Kirk Vaughn-Robinson. Kirk, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good, good. I mean, you have been featured in the Phantom of the Opera, actually, which is a well-known, very, very well-known play. I guess, what part did you have in the Phantom of the Opera?
Well, I initially started off in the show in the ensemble, so
Okay.
I understudied a bunch of roles, things like that, and then at one point I got moved up to doing the roles of Monsieur Lefebvre,
Right.
and the fire chief,
Okay.
and then I actually had an ankle injury, had to be
Really?
out of the show for a while. Then I came back and I was back in the ensemble. So, but I got to do that for about a year or two.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
pretty fun, I imagine, doing all that.
Yeah, exactly.
How did the role, I guess, become yours? How did you move up and everything? I guess, how did you get those roles?
Well, I started off understudying that particular role as well, and somebody in the show left, and who was doing that role, and so they moved me into the role of Monsieur Lefebvre and the fire chief, and
Okay.
I was also understudying the auctioneer, Donatello, Monsieur Firman, which is what the opera manager is, one of the lead roles.
Right,
So,
right. So how long were you with the Phantom of the Opera? Because, I mean, being with it for quite a while, as long as you can be, would be great, huh?
Well, the tour was out for 18 years. It was the longest running Broadway tour.
Yep.
And I was with it for 12 years.
12. Okay.
365 days a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? So I guess on average, would you have a show how many times a week?
We would do 8 shows a week,
Okay.
typically. And we would do one show Tuesday through Friday. And then we'd do 2 shows Saturday, 2 shows Sunday. We'd be off on Monday. And we'd have Monday night off and have to be back Tuesday night. So we had sort of like a day and 3/4 off.
How much stress does that put on a person like that, just doing all those shows?
You know, it's the show itself wasn't. It had its stresses. But you basically go into work for about 3 hours, 3.5 hours a night, or per show. But it was difficult when you think about traveling 365 days a year. We
Yeah.
were usually in a city for a month or more, so we were fortunate. We were different than a lot of tours that are out that sometimes do one night here, one night there, or 1 week here, 1 week there. So we could get to know a city. We could, find out, where to go to get your haircut, where to go,
Right.
For good food,
Exactly.
whatever. But it was stressful being away from home that much, traveling that much, packing that, always having to look ahead and say, okay, in the next city or 2 cities from now, where am I going to live?
Yeah.
Because we were responsible for finding our own housing as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Did you miss anything from back home that being on tour?
Of course, I miss my family. I
Yeah.
miss the friends that I had established. But a great thing about tour is you're constantly meeting new people.
Right.
And so I was constantly making new friends and new connections, things like that. So it had its definitely had its pluses as well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you said 12 years being on tour with them. From when to when were you really in the tour?
September 1998, and the tour just ended a year ago, October 31st, of 2010.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Now, Kirk, can you kind of give us a little bit of rundown of what the Phantom of the Opera is about for the people that are new to theater? Like I told you before,
Sure.
we got more rock fans, I think, on our page
Sure,
than anything. So we're hoping to get a little cross diversity here.
Well, Phantom of the Opera is your typical love triangle.
Okay.
You have the heroine, which is Christine, and she is in love with a vicomte. His name is Raoul.
Okay.
And then you have the Phantom, who has sort of plucked her from obscurity out of the ballet course and has started giving her voice lessons because he wants her to go from being in the ballet corps to actually a leading role at the Paris Opera.
Right.
So then you have the Phantom that's in love with Christine. So she's in love with Raoul, Raoul's in love with her, the Phantom's in love with Christine. So the two guys are battling over Christine, and the Phantom is the mysterious guy.
Yeah.
There's a couple of murders that happen. Everybody in the opera community or in the opera house knows about this supposed Phantom, and everybody's very on pins and needles.
Okay.
Pretty much every time they come into the building, things like that, because strange things happen and
Right.
strange accidents, things like this. So the Phantom perpetuates some of these things in order to, be able to win Christine's heart.
Okay.
Try to keep her for
Right.
himself.
Right. And I'm sure, like, bands and musicians, you guys probably have some sort of rituals that have to be done to prepare yourself to go on stage. What kind of rituals do you do before and maybe after even?
Well, before we get to work, you want to warm up,
Yep.
because it's a musical theater piece, but it's done in the genre of, trained opera voices. So, everybody in the cast is pretty much a classically trained singer. So, you definitely want to make sure you're warmed up. We traveled with a ballet troupe as well, so they were, warming up their bodies. We were warming up our voices. That's really the only ritual. I mean, sometimes you get into these things of just, you always go to Starbucks.
Okay.
You grab your Starbucks coffee and you come into work and you get yourself set up for your time to go on stage.
Yeah.
Certain other people that I worked with had definite rituals about the amount of time it took to put on their makeup, because some of them would have more specialized makeup for featured roles that they would do.
Right.
And definitely if I was on for one of my understudies, I would come in earlier, make sure all of my makeup was laid out, because you would go in to one scene, maybe at the top of the show, and then you'd have to run off stage and then get changed, put on a whole, sometimes this character makeup,
Right.
And then be ready to go out, back out on stage in costume and full makeup 15 minutes later.
Yeah.
So, it just depends. There is a lot of prep work.
Yeah. And in a continuous show like this, you talked about 8 shows a week.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about yourself being injured for a little while.
Sure.
If somebody, or even like a lead role or something, were to be injured, are there, understudies or backup people for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are everyone that's in the show, except for, maybe Phantom, Christine, and Raul, and I guess some of the leads, or all of the leads. Everyone that's in what's considered the ensemble is an understudy for usually one or more roles.
Okay.
So if you have somebody that gets sick in the middle of a show, like one of the leads, or even a featured supporting role, you have somebody that is, they might even be on stage in another role, but they might have to be called out and then prepped and put back into the show in a different role, depending on the importance of that person that has come out of the show. So typically, like, I understudied 3-4 different roles, and there were times that I would come into the building and I'd just get noticed then, hey, you're on for so and so tonight, or somebody would twist their ankle, or the flu would pass through the cast. And so you had sometimes people doing 2 or 3 different understudies in the show, because it'd be little bit parts here and there, but they were important to the action, and so they had to be there every night. You couldn't just cut that part out of the show. So, understudies were very, very, very important to a show like Phantom, because you also had vacations that had to be covered, personal days, sick days, as we talked about. So, yeah.
With having maybe 2 or 3 parts that you may have to memorize, how do people memorize such a huge part in a play or anything? Or I guess what kind of toll does that run on you?
Well, it's something that we are hired in. We know what we're going to be hired in as. If it's ensemble, then you're ensemble, but you might have this understudy, that understudy, that understudy that you're responsible for. So it is your responsibility to keep the lines fresh. We would be rehearsed once or twice in a city. We'd have a full understudy rehearsal.
Gotcha.
So things are kept fresh. We're ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, I do interviews and I need a piece of paper to, look at questions. So I can't imagine even being in a play.
Well, I have to say something about Phantom. It's such a it's such a talented cast.
Okay.
And it's a wealth of talent. The tour that I was on, and also the Broadway show, I'm sure, and the Vegas show, and the shows that are in other countries. It's such a talented cast. And so those people are trained professionals. We're all trained professionals, and it's just part of what we do.
Yeah.
You got to stay on top of it. You got to be ready to go. You got to be able. You have to be flexible. There's the big lesson that I've learned in theater is you have to be flexible.
Well, yeah, like you said, you're professionals. You're the ones that are good.
Because it's live. I mean, we can't just cut this scene and then splice it together with another one. I mean, there's people that are watching right there. So you got to keep it going, even if somebody stumbles or something unforeseen happens.
Along those same lines, have you had any embarrassing moments yourself where you have maybe stumbled on your lines or on stage, anything like that?
Well, let's see.
That you're willing to share?
Every once in a while you get a little bobble with your lines or something like that, but you just keep going, and everybody keeps. It's not like, I don't know, if people would remember the old Carol Burnett show where they would try to make
yep.
each other laugh on
Yeah,
camera.
yep.
You know, it wasn't like that. You know, if somebody would miss a line or flub a word or something like that, you just try to stay concentrated and keep a straight face. But as far as funny things happening, I mean, you have people tripping over door frames as they're making entrances into the show. Gosh, I'm just trying to think of anything as specific that I did. I'm sure there were many, but I probably blocked them all out.
Anybody go on stage too early than their part suggested?
Not usually too early. We have had people come on a little bit too late.
Okay, gotcha. Yep. Sure, that happens.
But it happens, and everybody just rolls with it.
Yeah.
And if an ad lib or two needs to be thrown in, then people come up with them and they go on. Yeah.
Now, I doubt this ever happened on stage, but any pranks the cast members would pull on each other?
I have to say that our cast prided itself in being very professional. Now, it's not to say that in a very subtle way, certain things would not be happening. It would be something that the audience would never see, never know about. But we would know, like a certain look or something like that, if it was could crack somebody up, or sometimes there might be a poke in the ribs as you walk by somebody, something like that. But it was never overt. It was never something that was done that would undermine the integrity of the show, because you have paid professionals performing, but you also have that whole audience that have paid anywhere from $40, $50 up to $125 to come see the show. So you wanted to make sure every night they had a great experience, and not at the expense of you clowning around on stage. It's not to say that funny things didn't happen, that we would get caught off guard and there would be some giggles or something here or there, but usually those were accidental kinds of things.
Right. So, and you're just talking about a great experience it was. What was the feeling like for 12 years to be part of this big production?
It was a really big production. It was an honor to be a part of it for such a long time. And it's a great show. People loved Phantom of the Opera. People would come and see it, year after year. If we would come, to Omaha, there would be people standing at the stage door that said, "Oh, we saw you, when you were here 4 years ago. We brought our kids this time," or and we had even some, we call them Phantom fans with a PH, that would actually travel from city to city.
Really?
If we were in their region, and they would come and see the show a couple of times in different theaters, in different states even.
Really?
So we had a big fan base, and it was quite an honor to be a part of that, and to be a part of that theater history.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's a dream come true for you.
It was. Yes.
Doing that. Lastly, for the people finding out about you for the first time, looking into theater, what do you want the fans and people to know about you and what you're doing now?
Well, here in Omaha, I'll be performing with Opera Omaha in a production of Hansel and Gretel that's going to be going on this fall. I'll also be performing with Opera Omaha in the spring in their production of The Mikado. I'm also a sculptor. I do bronze sculptures, and I do have a website. It's www.kirkvaughn.com, and that's KirkVaughn.
We got it here. Kirk Vaughn.
So just kirkvaughn.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Again, for Backstage Entertainment, I'm Jeremy Lafrentz. We're sitting here with Kirk Vaughn-Robinson. Definitely check out the theater, guys. There's a whole nother world outside of rock music, so check it out. Hey everyone, make sure to like Backstage Entertainment on Facebook to see our photos, to enter yourself into contests for autographed prizes, and other news. Also, make sure to click the subscribe button on YouTube to check out the rest of our videos. And you can find us on Twitter to get updates about what we're doing. For Backstage Entertainment, this is Jeremy Lafrentz.